Welcome to another edition of Reptile Fight Club. I'm your host, Justin Julander. We've got Mr. Chuck Poland here as well.
Hello.
Say hello to the people. All right, well,
Hello.
we're ready to fight. It's going to be a good one today.
Yes.
We got our old friend Phil Wolf on today, so
the wolf.
To have him. The
Hello.
Wolf of Wheeler Eye. I love that. That's like one of my favorite like nicknames, the Wolf of Wheeler Eye.
So if everybody could see how big Justin is smiling when he says it, you would, yeah.
Well, I'm flattered, but unfortunately, when I got that nickname, I had Wheeler Eye Cinctus. I've never actually owned Wheeler Eye, so now I'm like, damn. Now I have to buy Wheeler Eyes.
Yeah,
we'll have to change that. I've got a pretty nice group. I'll have to send you a couple or something.
Excellent.
Yeah, they're really cool. I'm liking them. So, and they seem to be very similar in care to Cinctus. So
sure, it's the workshop gecko.
Yep. Yeah. I love their face patterns too. The reticulations that the Cinctus don't really have very strongly, but did you see that albino one over in Australia?
Yes.
Produce that. That's crazy looking.
Oh man.
I mean, I still think I prefer the wild type, but that's pretty vibrant. That color. Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So, what's going on, fellas?
Nothing. Yeah. Just
snake dream.
Yeah, got good feedback on my NPR interview. So
that was fantastic, man.
Reached out, so that was cool. Like it was good, good to hear good feedback, and I had just a lot of fun with those guys, and it was cool, man. It was good.
I learned some new stuff about you, man. I thought I knew you well, but
really,
I didn't realize you'd be a monitor man in another life. That's cool.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I agree. They're awesome. They're a lot of work, but they're awesome.
And you know me, like I mean, like we were friends when I had monitors, and I still have some monitors. I just think when you. It's hard. And as somebody who's done monitors with snakes and all kinds of other stuff, it's a tricky balance just because, they can be so much more work. And I feel like now that I have, geckos and a pair of monitors and I have less snakes, it's probably less of a thing, but it's still, it's still like you still got to up your workload game a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. They require pretty constant attention almost. Yep, they're cool though. I seeing all these guys getting the glowered eye, I want to get some really rocks. They're so cool. Steve had some a while back, but I got to go photograph his for the website and stuff back in the day, but
Speaking of Steve, I just talked to him. He said he just talked to you.
Did you chat with him?
Well, I did. I thought that was I was reaching out because I thought that was my responsibility.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
I just talked to him today. I was looking at pictures of New Zealand geckos, and I'm like, I gotta call Steve. It's been too long.
Well, apparently, when I get tasked with something, I'm Mr. Right, not Mr. Right Now. So
it's all good, man. It's all good. Yeah, I told him, I'm like, Chuck says we got to have you on again, man. So when are you coming on?
I already hit him up. I'm like, did you set it up with Justin, or are we TBD? Like, let's make this happen. So
yeah. So he's a good guy. Yeah. So
of course.
I guess he's been pretty busy with the zoo, so we might have to wait till.
If we were going to make it a surprise, sorry, I spoiled it.
No, it's all good.
Steve will be coming on, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this isn't your first rodeo either, huh? You were on. We did one live in Texas, didn't we?
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah,
we did. That was a really fun time, man.
Yeah, that was. And
it's always interesting because we all have our own, podcasting set up and everything with microphones and headphones on. And here you are, 5 guys sitting around a coffee table, just sliding the cell phone from person to person. And it's so much more intimate, man. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of cool being in person there. And it was a lot of fun, but I really I don't know, doing that herp trip with you and Justin, you guys are the real deal. You got really broad knowledge and just really excited about everything and really have some good, thoughts and think things through. So I'm like, we got to have you back again. We had Justin back again. So we'll have to
I think we're just going to have Phil whoop our ass with some of his broad knowledge right here today.
Well, you see, there's a caveat to that, because we got the knowledge reading your books.
Oh God. No. It's a I don't know what to say about that. I'm blushing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You said. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Speaking of books, we're getting the next sections from Russ and getting that closer to. We're pretty much finished with the layout. He said he's got pretty much everything now. So I'm excited to see that. I thought he was going to send it today, but I haven't seen it. So we'll see. I also asked him if he wanted to be on the podcast. So
oh yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be really cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down for that.
He's a pioneer, man. He's done a lot of cool stuff.
He's fun. He's a fun guy to talk to.
Oh yeah,
too. Very,
he's really cool.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah, for sure. So that'd be fun. Well, I haven't heard back from him. He's busy, so
yeah, for sure.
We may not get him on. I don't know.
Hey,
but
carpet book first, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's not divert his attention to something else now. But
for sure.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to get that finished up. I don't know. I have a hard time too, because I cracked open the Knobtail book a couple days ago, and I'd forgotten what I had in there. Like almost when you finish a project, you're like, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to think about this for, a little while. And then you can kind of go back and enjoy it. But for me, it's like I go back and realize what I did wrong or missed or didn't include. It's like, oh man,
it's like a musician's song is never finished, right?
Yeah
exactly.
I do a lot of home improvements, and I know every mistake, and I walk past it and it just bothers me to death. So I can imagine that the book is probably the same issues.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, what do we got going on? Breeding season's in full swing, or you getting much breeding activity?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, the So like I said, I never see anything. So I mean, I've seen the male and the female disappear into the nesting box. So that's always a good sign. But who knows? Like those years that I had with what I was pretty sure was ovulation ended up with butt kiss. So it looks like it's all going great and just nothing happens. So
I know the feeling.
I mean it's hey man, an exercise in just letting go and letting things happen, and if they happen, amazing. If they didn't, hey man, whatever,
you still got the animals. Exactly. Whether they breed or not.
And sure. Like we talked about, if it doesn't work out, then good data either way, right? You can pretty much say, okay, well, keeping them in the same room but changing cages matters, like so we'll figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Phil? You got some good stuff going on?
I don't. It's funny you just mentioned like geckos. I haven't produced a gecko in like 3 years, man. And I'm about ready to just change up how I'm doing everything, because I don't know if it's my tub size or the amount of sand that I have, because I try to make it as naturalistic as I can. And my girls just hate my boys. And that's this is it. So I have another friend who told me to basically go to neutral territory and just get a CB70 rack with just that much sand in it, just about an inch or so, and throw them in that as like neutral, no man's land, so to speak, and just let them be for a day or two and then pull them out and do it again and pull them out. So I might try that this year, but all my snakes are too small still, man. I got a bunch of babies in 2019 and 2020 and just raising stuff up. So I've got, between my friend Marcus and I, last year we got 29 Cerastes.
Oh, wow.
And some of them will be breeder size this season, like this coming April in a couple months, but we really haven't decided what we want to pair and how we want to pair it. So I'm probably going to start giving them like a light cool. It's really late in the season to cool them, but I'm going to give them a light cool like this month and just kind of see if I get some tail wagging or something like that, and cross our fingers. So
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how, like, you think about feeding, baby Antaresia, you can pick them up and, help assist feed them if you need to. But with the little Cerastes or something, that's probably not the best way to do it.
I've gotten lucky in the past with some of the smaller, like we've Cerastes vipera.
Yeah.
Babies, I'll take a frozen thawed pinky head. Mm-hmm. And I'll take a piece of lizard shed from like a girdle tail lizard or even like a bearded dragon. Yeah. And I'll make like a little burrito out of that head. And I'll make it walk across the sand with a set of hemostats. And the smell of the lizard and the movement, they'll just whack it. And
nice.
I've gotten pretty lucky with that. So fingers crossed, but I don't want to count my eggs before I have chickens,
Yeah. Now when they bite, are they like envenomating and then waiting? Or I mean,
they latch on. Yeah, they don't want it. They don't want it to run away.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't want to have to chase after it. It's purely ambush.
Yeah, so. I didn't know if they, because some will bite and then retreat and wait for the animal to die and scent trail it and everything. But I didn't know if that was common with all venomous.
Yeah, and I've had some Cerastes, both Cerastes and Vipera, bite and release because they got like a mouthful of sand on accident, and they'll track the prey down, but. This is in an enclosure, you know what I mean? I don't know if they would be able to track it down in the desert per se, but who knows?
Yeah. So, that's cool. Yeah. I don't know. I've always had kind of a soft spot. And was that the first blacktail rattlesnake you'd seen in the wild?
Yes.
So we saw our first blacktail rattlesnakes. Man. That was pretty cool. That was a sweet snake.
I saw pictures.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling Stone, I'm so happy that I brought all those extra hooks because we all used them.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was worth the extra, check luggage. I put them in an old rifle case, and everyone's like, "Is that a gun?" And no, they're golf clubs. Like, why do you have golf clubs in a rifle case? Well, they're golf clubs. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I'm glad I brought them.
You had a nice assortment, and that came in very handy. That one that blacktail that got over onto the private land, and I had to kind of reach over with the hook and pull it over.
That's pretty funny that gun guys put them in guitar cases, and reptile guys put their hooks in gun cases.
Yeah, right.
What's going on?
Well, this is one of my first herp trips that I ever had to check my hooks. See, normally I'll put them in that same gun case in a nondescript cardboard box, and I'll just overnight them to where I'm going.
Yeah.
And that way I could put the blacklight flashlights for scorpions and thermocell for mosquitoes and all that stuff I don't want to bring in my luggage. And I'll just ship it to the hotel or the ranch or wherever we're going. But this time, because we were all meeting up and it was a Sunday and all the FedEx hubs were closed because it's Sunday, and
that's the I'm facing a dilemma now because I'm going on one of the trips with Rob, but I get home from a work trip like the day before I have to leave for the herp trip. So I'm trying to figure out, and the work trip's a week long. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to survive this, but you
should sleep on the plane, man. You'll be set.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what you do is you just pack all your herp stuff before your work trip. And then when you get home, just swap bags,
Yeah. Just see ya, honey. I'm going on another week trip. I have the
giant bug
My
out
wife
bag.
is the best. Yeah,
your wife's a saint.
Yeah,
legitimately a saint.
Yeah. She
for sure.
She lets me do a lot of fun stuff. I appreciate that. But I'd probably go a little crazy. I'm going crazy right now. It's ridiculously cold here, and I'm looking at like the photos from Australia. The people going out and herping in Australia and seeing the pictures and just going, I need to get out there. It's not good.
Yeah.
They need to open their doors again. We need to get this COVID stuff out of the way. But, we have brought Phil on to fight about Venomous. We're going to talk about Venomous mentorship and kind of the pros and cons and some of the failings and successes and things from that program. So we're probably going to have him limp us along a little bit because we're not so versed in Venomous, but hopefully we'll have a good discussion and we'll get some good information out there.
I'm sure the listener will be screaming at one of us either way.
Yeah.
It's cool, man. They're still listening.
Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, we'll go ahead with the coin toss. So this first one will be to see who gets to debate you. Now, this is Chuck's year, so he's been winning. He's won all the coin tosses this year, so we'll see how it goes. But all right, you ready to call it,
Chucky?
Heads.
Oh, tails. All right. I got you this time. I guess it's not complete wash.
So I will say this. I've listened to every single Reptile Fight Club.
Ah, that's nice.
And it's amazing to see you actually flip the coin.
Yeah. Right?
I love it.
It happens.
People, it's real. It actually happens. I just watched it.
Yeah. I always,
when you lose as much as I have, it definitely calls into question, like, are they really flipping a coin toss because Chuck is just really that bad? Like, really? So yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Well, and I heard you guys bad mouthing me on NPR about how I'm rigging the coin toss. So what's up with that, man? Like,
it's a double-sided coin.
That was a sentencing of your peers, my friend.
Yeah, I guess so. I must just give off the wrong vibes here, but yeah. Rob had my number on that one. Yeah. All right.
Not everyone's looking out for you. Some people are looking out for me, buddy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you moderate. I want to dive into this with Phil.
Do it.
I mean, I don't have much venomous keeping experience. I did keep a couple rattlesnakes when I was younger, and it was kind of, I didn't realize there were laws, I was an ignorant little kid. So I just had a couple of rattlesnakes in my bedroom, as a teenager or whatever.
Don't feel bad.
I've watched you work with them, man, and you're pro. You did great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with rattlesnakes, I I know rattlesnakes a little bit. I'm a little less sure with lapids in Australia and stuff. I would defer to others to try to tail those or something. But I did hold a red belly black. I tailed a red belly black snake.
Nice.
And I think that's the only kind. I did hold a death adder. My friend handed me a death adder, said, "Here, hold this." And I'm like, okay, take it back. He had no qualms about just picking it up out of the cage and handling it. I'm like, that's not for me. But yeah, I did hold it for a brief moment there, which is probably a stupid thing. Rico Walder was kind of making fun of me. He's like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And he had a couple of red belly blacks that were captives that he just kind of handed to people, and here, hold these. And I think I was the only one stupid enough to take them. But I'm like, well, if he's handling them, he must be that all. So either I got lucky or they were really pretty easygoing animals. But I don't know, the two rattlesnakes I had, one was caught on a heavily traveled trail and it never rattled, it never struck or was defensive at all. It was just really chill. And when I found out they were illegal, I gave them away to somebody else and let them deal with that. But I found out later it was a Great Basin. Yeah.
Oh,
is it Oreganus or is it Lutosis?
So now I go off Lutosis.
Yeah.
And
that's what I've always gone with. But.
I'm not a big rattlesnake guy, but one of my dream species is a legit Utah Lutosis.
Oh, they have some nice looking ones.
Man, you guys in Utah have the best reptile coloration, diversity, whatever you want to call it, phenotype, if you will. The Lutosis, the Pyromelina, the Cinctus Gila monsters.
Yeah.
The pinks, man.
Beautiful.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
The best.
Yeah. I wish we could keep them here, but we can't keep any of the rattlesnakes or the Gilas. But, and I think they just recently made it so they just recently made it so you could collect milks and Mountain Kings. Limited number, but
that's awesome.
Kind of cool. So
at least there's some fresh blood out there,
Yeah, exactly. And they're kind of making common sense, changes to the laws, which is really refreshing from government. But
you're almost kind of sketched out, right? You're like,
wait a second, is this a trap? But the Lutosis, especially from down in the southwest corner of the state, that have those black heads and the really white bodies with black spots. They're just gorgeous. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do the coin flip for which side we're going to take. So we're going to talk, the pros and cons or the failings and successes of Venomous mentorship. Mentorship flip. You got it? Yeah. I turned into the Swedish chef, apparently. All right. You want to call it?
I'll call tails.
Tails. It's heads. I win again, 2 in a row, man.
Look at that, man. It's your night. I love it.
It's my,
I'm not even mad I lost.
I'm going to go with the pros because you probably know the system much better and the flaws. So,
no problem.
And I guess I could go first. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, winning the 2 coin tosses. I'm feeling pretty cocky right now.
You deserve it, man. You do.
Yeah. Well,
you look kind of cocky right now.
Yeah, it's gonna go fall apart real quick, but I'm gonna get put in my place here pretty soon. But so, when I think about, keeping venomous reptiles, obviously it makes a lot of sense to learn from people who have kind of been there and done that and do a good job of it. So, I could see, and I guess maybe I think about falconry where, they're really good at policing their own groups and kind of keep having a check on other members of the falconry kind of grouping. And so I would hope that a venom mentorship would be similar to the falconry mentorship, where
you would think.
Yeah, you would hope, I guess.
You would hope.
Like in a perfect world, I would see, somebody that's done it, that has a proven track record of safety, who's following all the regulations, who, has antivenom on hand in case of a bite. And they're the ones that are teaching the next generation how to keep venomous responsibly. Now, I guess that has a lot of caveats and a lot of, you're assuming that everybody that gets into that is going to do it responsibly or do it, and I guess myself as an example, I didn't really do it responsibly because I didn't look into the laws. I just saw a rattlesnake out on a hike and I went, oh, I want to keep one of those. And so I brought it home. I was a minor and maybe it's on my
and you can't prosecute me for
yeah.
things that may or may not have happened when I was younger.
Yeah. Thank you, lawyer Chuck.
Yeah, that's totally
right.
what that sounded like.
Yeah. Well, it is probably past any kind of,
Could you imagine the judge if you 16-year-old
if you
Justin
had lawyer Chuck? Oh,
well, I was going to say just 16-year-old Justin walking into the courthouse and the judge reading like possession of rattlesnakes. Why are you here?
Yeah. I would hope that's how it would go down. They'd probably go $1,000 fine. I'm like, oh no, I don't have $1,000. 16-year-old Justin would not do well with that. But so I guess in my mind, that's kind of how I picture it. And I understand completely that probably doesn't match reality. But honestly, I don't. I probably should have looked this up, looked into it a little better. But I'm sure there's requirements for mentorship, how many hours, who is mentoring you. I would hope that's kind of written.
I mean, is that the
case?
Is there a governing body for venomous mentorship? Like,
yeah. I mean, imagine it depends on the state too, right?
It also depends on your clique that you're in.
Yeah. Like, I mean, who's signing you off, right? Like
if you need to be signed off.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So in Utah, I know, you have to get a permit to keep anything venomous, and they usually don't give out permits except to maybe zoos or research institutions. So there was a bite. I remember back in like the 80s, there was a venomous bite. It was from the saw-scaled viper.
Wow,
somebody got bit at the University of Utah from a saw-scale viper. And I remember there was a huge panic because there was no antivenom anywhere. And so,
it's a nasty bite, man.
Yeah. And those kind of things make the news, they
I can imagine.
So kind of, I still remember it, 30 years later or whatever. So pretty crazy, but so I guess that's kind of how I'd lead out is, I would see that would be a very beneficial thing to have is, a good venom mentorship program established and with some kind of checkpoints and ways to ensure that the next generation of venomous keepers is being responsibly educated. So,
okay.
Yeah. What you got? Poke holes in that.
I was gonna say, do you want me to augment yours and then rebuttal, or
it's up to you? I mean, you can educate us. Yeah.
I want to see you basically make his argument look better and then shred it apart. That'd be the best.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks.
Yeah. No worries, dude. No
you
worries.
Hell of a moderator.
Yeah. Listen, this is Phil's the guest here, man. Let him shine.
That's good. That's all good.
So, the way that you're thinking is fantastic. And that's the way that it honestly should be. Certain states like Florida, for example, there's a number of required hours through a mentor program. But other states like Pennsylvania or Texas, you just got to buy a fishing license. That's it.
Yeah.
So one might say that government encroaching on the way you do things is bad. Others might say that government encroaching on the way you do things is good because it reminds people or teaches people how they honestly should be doing it. I think the structure that Florida has is a fantastic structure in terms of having a mentor, maintaining hours. The problem is in 2014, they augmented it from 1,000 hours for all Venomous to 1,000 per group, and there's 4 groups. So if you want all 4, that's 4,000 hours. And the running joke is that somebody in Tallahassee, when they were typing out the laws, they fat fingered a pinky and gave it an extra 0. And when the commission saw that, they go, leave it. So basically, there are laws in place to keep things straight. But at the same time, why should I have to? You know what I mean? Why do I need 1,000 hours with Gila monsters or beady lizards? Who has 1,000 hours of hands-on experience with a beady lizard before they actually get one? No one. No one.
That's ridiculous.
Now, one might say, again, playing devil's advocate with myself on this one, there is a right and wrong way to handle and or manipulate heliderms. No one learns it and no one does it. People either pick them up like they're puppy dogs and they have an accident or they have an incident, or they manhandle it like it's a, lethal Komodo dragon that's going to go for their jugular, and they want to be either injuring the animal or just freaking them out and ruining the training that they did.
Yeah.
So that again goes back to the whole, should we have mentors, should we not? So in my personal opinion, I like the way that Florida's structured their licensing system. However, there is stupidity built into it. Like, why do I need 1,000 hours? Why should I sacrifice almost 2 years of my life doing this in my free time to buy a permit for a lizard that's not even lethal?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Sense.
There's only one, I'll say, unconfirmed report of a Gila monster killing someone, and it turned out that it was actually all crap, and it was actually a rattlesnake. So
yeah. Now with the 1,000 hours, is that so you're having to go and work with somebody else's venomous snakes, right? So they're not obviously you can't own them, so you have to find somebody who has venomous snakes.
That is a lot of cage cleaning just to get
And it used to be fairly simple. So let's say I'm new in Florida back pre-2014 and I want to get into venomous handling, and I start an apprenticeship or an internship somewhere, and Chuck's Reptiles has, some rattlesnakes, and I go there after work. I work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday as a normal guy. And I go there at 5:30 and I work till 8 o'clock at night. And I log a couple hours and it says, I was at Chuck's, I handled X, Y, and Z, general maintenance, whatever. And that was your logbook. It was one of those old black and white composition books. You know what I'm talking about? The marbled books.
Yep.
And you would submit that whole book or photocopy the book. You'd submit the whole book to the state with all your other letters of recommendation, all of the crap, and you're checked for $100, and they'd issue you the permit. Well, now they want to know specifics. And this goes back down to, why should I have to explain everything in vivid detail? Well, that's because they want to stop us. They want to cull us, right?
Yeah.
So now what they want you to do is they want you to make a ledger or a key, like a map, where it says, okay, letter A is unlocked cage. Letter B, remove animal. Letter C, change water bowl. Letter D, remove feces. And then they want to say, okay, on January 1st, 2022 at Chuck's house, I did A, C, F, and Q on one Gila monster from 5:15 to 5:25. And now you have to add that up to 1,000 hours.
Oh, God.
That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So now you're going to get people forging hours. You're going to get people forging a lot of stuff because it's asinine. It makes no sense. Now, do I think that a person should be able to do 10 days of handling and all of a sudden own a mamba? No, not at all. We're talking about totally different things. But in the case of like the heliderms, for example, you want to put in a few months work and learn some techniques and learn some tips and tricks and whatever, and maybe get your enclosure set up at home. That's fine. That's great. Even if you want to extend that to, let's say, a year and a day, I can be totally fine with that. But 1,000 hands-on hours with an animal that's not even lethal makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, now, is this a matter of they know that nobody's really going to do 1,000 hours, but they just want to make it so you can't get around working with something for, quite a while. So they're saying 1,000 hours. They know people are going to fudge the numbers, but they're why
put the numbers in there then? If you know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why would you?
Yeah, like, it's the opposite. In fact, what happens is, over the past, I'll say 15 years, I've mentored probably between 20 and 30 people. But of those 20 and 30 people, maybe less than 10 actually got their permit. And that's not because they didn't want to per se. It's that because things happen, people move, they get married, they have children, they get a different job, they realize reptiles really aren't for them. Or they realize, man, I've been doing this for 2 years in the small amount of time that I can, and I'm nowhere close to being done. It's not worth it. And one might say that that's the state's goal.
Yeah.
But other people may say, well, no, you're actively participating in a mentorship program or an internship program. You're going to learn all you can. So it is difficult for me to take the con side because I am so pro, but I totally see a lot of flaws and a lot of cons in that regard.
Yeah.
So
I guess maybe I could, look at it from this angle. Like, if my kid comes to me and says, "Hey Dad, I want a bike. I want this, racing bike or whatever." And you're like, "Well, that's an expensive bike, save up your allowance and we'll talk about it, once you've got it saved up." And then, that kind of fizzles and they're like, "Okay, yeah, maybe I don't want a racing bike if I have to work hard and save up for it. Maybe I'm not into that racing that much." And so I could see that could weed out people who were, just kind of a passing fancy. "Ooh, I want to have a venomous snake because that's cool." And then they're like, "Oh wait, 1,000 hours? Yeah, no thanks." And so it kind of weeds out those.
You can break it down. Just going off your whole bike thing, which is a great analogy, I can make it even more in depth using the same analogy. So when you're 16 or 17 years old, you get a learner's permit for a car, right?
Yeah.
You do that for a minimum of a year. Then you turn 18 and you go for your driver's ed. So now you have a driver's license, but you still have stipulations. You have a curfew of, say, 11 p.m., right? Got to be home at 11. And then when you turn, 19, it's extended to 1 a.m. Excuse me. And eventually, by the time you turn 21, you can stay out as late as you want. And you've got that 4 or 5 years of driving under your belt at the time when you can stay out till 2 a.m. Now, if a 16 or 17-year-old gets their learner's permit, should they be able to buy a Ferrari?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Now we're talking about ethics. We're talking about ethics, we're talking about morals, and we're talking about pocketbook too. Yeah. So in my opinion, there's no reason why an 18-year-old kid can't drive a Ferrari, but they should want to go to Ferrari school and learn how that stuff works. No different than a guy that says, "Oh, I've had Porsches for 20 years. I'm going to buy a Formula One race car." Whoa, dude. Totally different.
Yeah, right.
For sure. And at the same time, it's like, "Oh, I owned a Gixxer 600 motorcycle. You know what? I'm going to soup up a Subaru and make a rally car." You're going to end up in a ditch.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
That's true. Yeah.
So
also like driving a Ferrari is not the same as racing a Ferrari. You could
exactly.
Yeah. So I get I like that analogy as well. Yeah.
I think the permit system like Florida has is a great system, but it's structured incorrectly, in my personal opinion. But then again, I think about where I learned from, and I had mentors. But a lot of my I had multiple mentors because I'm very much on the page of learn as much as you can from as many people as you can forever, right?
Yeah.
Never stop learning.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of mentors that should not have been teaching at all. And I had to learn a lot of things the hard way with a lot of close calls, and a lot of dangerous situations that were more than avoidable had I learned correctly from a correct mentor. So I don't know if this is...
Can you give us an example of that? I'm curious to hear like...
So I've had a guy hand me the keys to the shop and say, "Hey man, don't die." Walk away.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bad one.
My first time ever going into a wholesaler's venomous room, the containers in which some of the venomous were held were these small acrylic shoe boxes, right? And I want you to picture a Sterilite tub, but it's very thick, very dense, very rigid plastic that cracks super easy. There's no flex in it. So if you squeeze it, it's going to crack. And the lid has no latches. It just sits on top. And the only thing holding that lid down is the box above it.
Oh, God.
And then the only thing holding that lid down is the bottom of the shelf of the next shelf. And we're talking about 200 or 300 venomous snakes in these containers.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's air holes and stuff drilled.
Sure.
So when you get there and you're like, how do I do this? Figure it out. Oh, just grab by the sides. Watch those air holes. That was it. That's all I was told.
Really?
So now I have to figure out in my mind how I'm going to use my hands appropriately, because there was no Venom Defender gloves back then. Right? How am I going to use my hand to extract this container while maintaining pressure on the lid enough to not allow the snake to get out or push it open or strike it open. But at the same time, I can't squeeze it too hard because I'll crack it in my own hand. And now what am I going to use to put this on? I can't just put it on the floor because it's this big, it's the size of a literal shoebox or smaller even. So now I have to have some kind of table. I have to have some kind of, utility bench or something. And then learning height ratio in terms of my eye level, because I'm short and stocky. How tall should I be? In terms of how tall should the work area be? How low should the work area be? Am I inconveniencing or putting myself in harm's way because I'm bending in the wrong way that's uncomfortable? Things like this that no one ever taught me that I had to learn on my own.
Yeah, you wouldn't even think about it going into it until you're doing it, and then you're like, wait a second, this is...
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, that's for sure.
Right, exactly. And now, so speaking of these shoeboxes specifically, I've now safely removed the top shoebox, right? What do I do with the other one?
Right. What's holding the snake in the one below it?
Exactly. So what I did was I took 4 or 5 of the same shoeboxes and I taped, they're empty, completely empty, and I taped them with red electrical tape. So that I knew that those red ones were completely empty. There was no animal in them, and I would use them as a placeholder. And that would prevent the lid from opening. But now I've removed the shoebox. I put it on my little work table. It's easy to take the lid off because you take a snake hook and flip the lid off, right? Common sense. How do you get the lid back on? Better yet, how do you get the animal back in and the lid on?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing, it's literally just gravity is the only thing holding it in place.
My gosh. Well, I was thinking too, like, my pythons, when I go to open their cage, they're ready to grab whatever's coming near the cage because they think it's time to eat, so just the act of your hand going towards the cage says, oh, it's food time, get ready. And so I can imagine that several venomous snakes would be the same way. And
and I get like flipping the lid off and getting the snake out, and you have time to like think through that, right? But once the snake's out and you're trying to get it back in and get it back on, you're like, it's happening, and you can't. It's like, it's not like, the whole like in the moment reaction thing starts to happen, and I would imagine that's where it gets kind of really dicey, other than just it not being a safe situation, but like that's when things actually go into motion,
Oh yeah, and then let's not even talk about being surprised because the information you were provided, if you didn't ask for it, you didn't get it. And at the same time, the information you were provided that you did ask for is completely wrong. So for example, I walk in the room one day at this same facility and the trash can lid is on. And something that I learned was if the trash can lid's closed, there's 2 things in that trash can: garbage or a snake, right?
Right.
And it took some time for me to learn from other professionals, from bona fide mentors, that a snake hook laid across the can, cutting the diameter of the circle in half, is the universal sign for a snake in the can. And I've done that with multiple different facilities, and that's kind of the gist of it. And you walk in and you go, man, I don't want to just open this trash can because I can't see what's inside. It's that gray Rubbermaid, hefty, whatever. So I'd go ask somebody else, hey man, is there a snake in the trash can? Oh, I don't know. I didn't see anybody go in there today. Oh, hey man, do you know, is there a snake in the can? Oh yeah. It's a forest cobra that came in on that last shipment. It's in the bag, taped up at the bottom. All right, cool. Now, no one told me how to open a trash can properly. And I know it sounds asinine, but there is a technique to that in terms of using the eclipsing of light to your advantage. Because if I just whip that lid off real quick, I've now just blasted that animal with a ton of light, and their first instinct is going to be defensive against that light.
Lunge at it, yeah.
Excuse me. So when we talk about removing lids with particular species, there's a sliding motion, right? So I'm going to slide the lid across, essentially making the crescent moon eclipse right? So that they see the light slowly fade away. And then when I open with certain species, I do the same thing. So that way they're not going to instantly attack that white light. But I also, with certain animals, I'm going to use that lid as a shield. So if the lid has handles, right? There's 2 handles on either side of the diameter of the circle. There's also handles on the trash can itself. Well, I don't want the handle lids to become parallel with the tub lid or tub handles, excuse me, because now it's cumbersome. I can't use a snake hook. I can't use a pry bar. I can't use my hands appropriately. I need to offset them. So I need the 2 lid handles to be perpendicular with the actual handles on the trash can. And this is stuff that no one told me. I had to figure this out. So now that I have it offset, I can lift that lid and put it against me like a shield. So if it is something that's going to fly out, it's going to hopefully go for the shield first. And if it is something that spits, it's going to spit that shield first. And that when I opened that thing, there was a 9-foot black forest cobra that flew out, came out of the trash can onto the ground, stood almost eye level with me. I'm like 5'6", I'm a short guy. Stood almost eye level with me, and my friend Chris was in the room with me, and I had a set of gentle giants, those grabbers, and I put the gentle giants against the base of his sternum, like the front of his chest, and I pushed him back as I climbed up the wall. And the reason why I climbed up the wall like Spider-Man was because the door opened the opposite direction. It opened in and not out. So I go to grab the doorknob behind me, and I can't push it.
You have to go forward towards the snake. Right.
And again, this is something that no one taught me. And at the same time, as I'm pushing this forest cobra away, my friend Chris takes a bigger hook, hooks it, it turns to look at him. And with that point, I could manage to get the animal tailed and put it back in the trash can. But these are all things that no one taught me. I had to learn the hard way. So in one way, I thought I was being mentored, and I was not. You know what I mean? So I am obviously pro mentor. That's why this podcast is going to be so unique. But but you can learn a lot of bad stuff from people that don't care, or people that didn't know themselves to teach. You know what I mean?
So I'm thinking too, like, you know, in a perfect world, we would have maybe a tiered system where you have to have experience with kind of less dangerous animals before you get into the more dangerous ones. Is there any kind of thing like that in place? And I know they do this in Australia, right? Like they have, you have different things you have to work with and build up, and not just with venomous, but all of them. But
and from what I gather, the Australian system is very, very smart, except for a few species. Like there are certain species that, like, for example, most Australians believe that, you know, the Death Adder complex, Acanthopus complex, should be one of the first venomous snakes you work with, because it's not going to fly across the room and bite you in the face. You know, it is a very terrestrial ambush snake. But for whatever reason, it's in the top tier. So that really doesn't make sense to most keepers, most handlers. Now, there are tier systems in place for other states. There are tier systems in place for facilities and universities. But our good friends, Brent and Chris from Venom Life Gear, they're putting together I don't want to butcher this. Forgive me, guys, if you're listening. They're putting together a handling program that they've already been doing with government. So basically they go to the military base and they say, okay, you have, you know, Geckos, or you have, you know, rattlesnakes, or, you know, you've got whatever on said military installation. We will teach your soldiers, we will teach your police, we will teach your firefighters how to handle these things. And it's usually a week-long course, and they work them through it and walk them through it. And the plan is to basically standardize that. The same way that we have like Safe Surf in restaurants. Is Safe Surf law? No. Does it look good? Absolutely. Do they teach the correct stuff? Absolutely. So I don't want to say that Venom Life Gear is going in that direction. And whatever, you know, educational organizations that are affiliated with that concept, but that's kind of the idea, is to have a uniform, you know, where everyone's learning the same. Right.
And that makes that was kind of my next point, is, you know, that would be a huge benefit to have a standardized training that's recognized, you know, as legitimate by whatever state you're in keeping venomous. And then I think it would be wise for those, you know, the folks that are putting that together to get buy-in from states that allow venomous keeping, and have that, you know, be, you know, in the regulations or something. You've got to complete these courses or whatnot, you know, to be able to get a license to keep these animals.
But now here's the con. So we go back to that slippery slope of, we like government. Government's good. Government watches us. Government takes care of us. And I mean this in the good way. But government also is infamous for giving an inch and taking a mile. Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden you've said, okay, I've presented you this safe serve thing, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll call it that. And, Florida says, oh, that's fantastic. If you do that, wham, you get an instant, Viperidae permit. Okay. Mm-hmm. Covers all the Florida native stuff. You're good to go, right?
Yeah.
But let's just say Georgia says, no, you can't do anything unless you get that. Mm-hmm. Well, now what? Now I have to pay. Now I have to travel. Now I have to put myself out when I could have done it in my home area or whatever. And again, I'm not talking bad about that. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate on the topic.
Sure.
And at the same time, let's assume it's not, our good friends at Venom Life Gear that are extremely knowledgeable and worldly with experience. Mm-hmm. Let's assume somebody is government related or whatever that is not bona fide to do this.
USGS survey, folks.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Why can someone please tell me why U.S. Geological Survey is doing the Tegu research in Homestead?
Yeah.
People bizarre. That study rocks are now, cutting open frozen Tegus. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, all of a sudden now you've got, Bob who's teaching this class, and Bob's only handled snakes for 4 months. Mm-hmm. Bob's going to now tell me how I need to handle my elapids. Not going to happen, Bob.
Yeah.
So, unless it's Bob Rock. If it's Bob Rock, then I'll pay every time. So it's, how do you vet those people? Mm-hmm. How do you find out if they merit or they're worthy enough, whatever you want to call it, not to sound, elitist or egotistical.
Sure.
Right. How do you find out if they're righteous and they're not just, oh yeah, do this, mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many times I've regrettably taught individuals that went around to another state when they did not complete their training with me. They pulled an Anakin Skywalker. They mm-hmm. left me, went off, did their own thing, and now they're God's gift to snakes, and they're teaching a lot of bad stuff because mm-hmm. they never got to learn it from somebody.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, maybe they didn't think the way that I thought. Again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but there's a lot of things that is common sense that you or I or Chuck or whomever would figure out. And this guy just throws it out the window. And now he's teaching people how to do this. And it's like, no, you do not pick that up with your hands. No, you do not use a hook that short. No, you don't use your hands to open that latch. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I would imagine when you're teaching, there are certain things like, if you're you teach people, you don't tail a snake or you don't do this. And then when you get better, maybe that's a skill you acquire, but to initially teach them, hey man, you teach them the safest, best possible way. And then when they become more experienced, just like any professional, in aviation, we do that. We teach strictly by the book. And if you have a better way after you've learned, what the requirement is and the safest way to do it, and you're knowledgeable about it, there are other ways that you can do it. But you need to know what you're doing, right? Like that's kind of,
it's
right.
The famous, of course, it's the famous saying of shortcuts are great as long as you memorized how to take the long way.
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like, for example, when right now I'm not doing any apprentices at all right now, just because COVID put a stop to a lot of stuff and facilities got moved, and it's just everyone's lives are so hectic. So I will do it in the future, just not right now.
Sure.
But when I was doing it, you would tell real quick who was a diehard, wanted to work with snakes, and who just wanted pictures for Instagram, because for the first 10 weeks, they don't touch an animal.
Yeah.
Even with a hook,
mm-hmm.
For the first 10 weeks, they're watching and they're learning, and we're burning the repetition in their minds. And eventually after 5-6 weeks, okay, now you're actually going to start cleaning cages for the handler. Handler removes the animal, apprentice goes in, cleans the cage, mm-hmm. and then back and forth. Right. Yeah. And after 10 weeks, we start with small stuff. We start with copperheads, pygmy rattlesnakes, stuff that is less likely to cause a fatality. Mm-hmm. Not saying that they're weaker or more mild, but less likely to cause a human fatality. Mm-hmm. And we work from there,
Yeah.
And I think that that's an appropriate way to do it. I think that's a good way to do it, providing the person doing it knows what they're talking about and isn't just a bullshit artist. Pardon my French.
Yeah. No, I mean, there definitely needs to be some kind of vetting of people who are the trainers, like, and I guess the world we live in, of course that doesn't always work out, and you get people who, claim to be this or that, or that have a certain number of hours. So they meet, the requirements, but they're not really that great. So, but you're right. Anytime you give the government say in who does what, then, that adds a layer of regulation and just sometimes just flat out ignorance or foolishness to the problem, and sometimes makes it worse than better. So that's a difficult thing to say. This is exactly how are we going to do this and how are we going to implement this?
Phil, does, if I could jump in real quick, does Florida, I mean, or any requiring, state that is requiring mentorship, or do they offer or create kind of like a set of requirements, other than like you have to have this many hours? Like, do they say like you need to, check certain boxes or do certain things, or is it just more of like, I mean, obviously you gave the like how they break it up into hours per group and things like that, but more detailed, like, are they going into the minutia?
No, definitely not. And there are guidelines in place, like again, I'll speak for Florida because it is my state.
Sure.
There's sections that get submitted for disaster protocol, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it be tornado or hurricane or, flooding, you're live in a flood zone, whatever it is. And you have to submit part A to the state, and part B stays with you at the facility. You also have your bite protocol, right? Everyone should have a bite protocol. Now, there's a lot of people out there that think, oh, if you don't have antivenom, you're an asshole. Well, again, pardon my French, but some people can't get it. Mm-hmm. It is not. Now, it is an easy process to get antivenom if you physically can. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have all of your paperwork in order, you have a physician who knows you and trusts you, and you're going to get this stuff and buy it from the pharmaceutical distribution companies overseas, rock and roll, do it. Mm-hmm. But nobody should be, chastised or slandered because they can't get it. You know what I mean? And I understand that there's a lot of risk entailed from using up supplies from zoos and antivenom banks and, milking facilities and stuff like that. But there is nothing that I can think of in any legislation or anything that says we're going to give you a driver's ed test, or we need you to write out, how many feet this is, or how many inches is this, or how much time is this. No. They say, give us a list of the tools you're going to use. You put snake hook. That's it, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I try to put other ones just to see what happened, but what's the point? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the inspectors, they do a good job for the most part, but it also comes down to the individual inspector. If you even have inspectors, there are some inspectors that are snake guys, and they're like, oh man, this is cool, or oh man, this is not cool. You might want to do X, Y, and Z. And there's other inspectors that they're just a cop, and they don't even know about snakes at all.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, in the past, I've had inspectors say, is that venomous? Because you don't have a label on that one. Well, no, it's not venomous. That's why I don't have a label.
Right.
So things like that can be a detriment. And just going back to the cons of mentorship, if you have a bad mentor, they're not going to teach you these things, or they're going to teach you these things wrong or incorrectly. And that's even worse.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry. Let me
go ahead.
So like with having an inspector, or I mean, if you even have an inspector, and to your point about how agencies like to just make things difficult to discourage people. A lot of times they don't want to pay for the infrastructure to monitor it or whatever. It's just like, hey, you pay this fee, and somebody looks at your paperwork, and that person may not have any clue what they're looking at. Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like, you jump through all these hoops, but are they really like beneficial hoops, or are they just like, go through the motions hoops, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, when I first got my actual license, I didn't get I got inspected for the first initial inspection to make sure my room was, kosher. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get inspected for like 6 years after that because the guy just didn't care. He's like, that guy Phil, he's a good guy. I don't care. And then he retired, and his next guy in line, he wrote me 7 misdemeanors in one visit. And every single misdemeanor was label related. So out of force of habit, we put danger venomous on every enclosure. Well, the state law changed that year. It had to say danger venomous reptile, or reptiles, plural, if there was more than one. So because I didn't have the word reptile after the word venomous, I got a misdemeanor.
It would have been better if it was a venomous horse, and you know what I mean? Like, what is it? What is
exactly?
What the?
Well, that's and
that's
again,
weird.
Dude, it's like the fire inspector. They have to find something that's their job.
Yeah.
And he gave me, I had 7 of those crap misdemeanors. One of which was for possession of an unlocked enclosure for Hydrodonastis gigas, the false water cobra, which was not and still is not listed as a venomous reptile in Florida.
Yeah.
So he gave me 30 days to make my corrections. I made the corrections within like 12 hours. I emailed him pictures, and all the charges got dropped. No big deal. But things like that is a detriment, because I never had anybody tell me I had to have venomous on there. You know what I mean? I never had anybody instruct me that. And maybe that's, ignorance is not bliss. You have to do your own due diligence and do your own homework. But a good mentor will dig those things up. A bad mentor just won't care.
Yeah. So I wanted to maybe hit on the antivenom thing, because that seems to be kind of a sore spot for zoos and for responsible keepers who have it. And they expect everybody else to have it as well. If you're going to be keeping venomous, you might, but maybe there's a better way to do it. Some kind of system where you pay dues or whatever, and that goes towards something like an antivenom. Again, I'm talking in a perfect world.
You're talking great ideas. The thought process you have is fantastic. I cannot agree with you more. I think that everything that you just said is fantastic, but it'll never happen because the FDA doesn't get their slice.
But now, how does the FDA get their slice otherwise?
They don't. That's why it's so hard. So basically, in the United States, we have one antivenom that does everything except for coral snakes, and that's CroFab. CroFab is FDA certified. And it wasn't until, I think, 16 or 17 months ago that the Mexican equivalent was approved. And I don't know how it got approved. I don't know how much lobbying went to do that. And again, this is way above my pay grade. But now that other antivenom is now FDA approved. Every other antivenom in the world is not FDA approved, and therefore is referred to as an investigatory new drug. So if you can get those licenses and those paperworks to import said investigatory new drug, you're golden. If you can't, because you don't have the ability to do that, then you're up the creek.
And I imagine with an IND, they probably want to have some kind of reasonable justification, but not something that's going to get their product a black mark. You know what I mean? Like,
correct. And at the same time, it comes down to money, because if I purchase, let's say I go to South Africa and I buy a vial of Samar from over the counter in the drugstore, all I got to do is give them money, right? It's about $80. If I have to get it through the hospital system here, it's about $1,400 a vial.
Yeah. Same with CroFab, right? I mean, if you get
CroFab is crazy. If you get, all right, better yet, if you get bit on the trail, right? It's 1,600, 2 gram, whatever it is. Do you know how much it is for animals, for livestock and dogs?
For like $10,
$300. $300.
The human markup
no physician,
is ridiculous.
No physician, no ER doctor will ever put a antidote or antivenin in you that says intended for canine use.
Right.
That'll never happen.
It's probably a liability and malpractice lawsuit. They're not willing to.
Well, I heard that markup for the human antivenom, it was all just a marketing thing, so they could go back and forth with the insurance companies. They market at $1,000, knowing they're going to have to pay they say, okay, yeah, 1,000, but they'll only pay like 800, but it really only costs 100 or 200, so it's ridiculous. But I guess, again, I'm kind of speaking in ideals, but if there was a way that state government could have kind of a pool, so and whoever was venomous keeper paying their dues or paying for license, that kind of went into that pool, and then they could replace fewer vials because it's centralized. I guess then how do you get it to somebody who's bit at the
well, so like we have Venom 1 and Venom 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So in Florida we have Venom 1 and Venom 2. Venom 1's in Miami, Venom 2's in the Hillsborough County area, Tampa area, and they have good venom banks. We also have several individual facilities in central and northern Florida that make up their own bank, and they all have a collective group of antivenom because they're all milkers for pharmaceutical, right? So in the Southeast, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Southern Alabama, we're in business because those individuals can essentially be anywhere within the day, right? Helicopter, airplane, whatever it is. But if you live in Salt Lake and you need, South African, boom slang monovalent antivenom, you might be up the creek. And certain states, which I think is very interesting, certain states require you to have the antivenom in order to keep the species, which I think is a really cool thing. But it sucks because you got to pay for the stuff. But at the same time, if you can't do those IND forms, if you can't get the stuff in, you're done. You can't keep.
So is that Phil? Is that something that they do out of ignorance? Like, oh, if you're going to keep this, you need to have the antivenom because that's just good practice.
It's a deterrent.
Or that's what I
all it is.
Okay.
It's a deterrent.
All right. So they're savvy enough to know they can't get this, so it's an exclusionary kind of rule.
Right.
Gotcha.
And it comes down to what's trending. It comes down to what's hot in the news. It comes down to who got scared with what incident happened, and
what famous person posted an Instagram post next to a snake or something.
Exactly. And most of these government agencies, they're legally obligated to investigate every single claim. When I was living with my parents, when I was younger in college, I got a phone call from Florida Fish and Wildlife, my inspector, and he's like, "Hey man, did you lose a king cobra?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Are you sure?" He's like, "You're not going to get in trouble. I need to know if it's yours, and we need to figure out what we're going to do." I said, "No, dude, I don't keep kings. I'm too short." And he giggled. But someone had put an ad on Craigslist saying, "Lost pet snake, answers to the name of Fluffy, likes to be scratched behind the ears." And it was clearly a picture of a 65-year-old Filipino man in the jungle holding this king cobra. Clearly a joke. But they legally had to investigate all the license holders in my county.
Wow. So what a waste of time.
Dang, that's like venomous swatting right there,
Right. Well,
he was cool about it. He just called me,
Yeah. But he was cool, right? Like, I mean, that could be turned into not cool pretty quick, right?
It could escalate very quickly.
Yeah. If you have somebody who doesn't understand why they're doing what they're doing,
or you have somebody acting on bad intention, against the animal community. I could see something like that.
Yeah, in the regulatory industry, we always separate into two groups. You've got facilitators and you've got blockers, and blockers need so much more effort and justification and proof that you can do the things than a facilitator. A facilitator knows nobody's perfect. They're going to help you try to figure out the best and safest way to do it, whereas a blocker just doesn't want the headache, so they're going to say no. They're just going to block it and move on. But now with antivenom, I mean, obviously the goal is not to use it and to so it's going to go bad. It's going to you're going to have to replace it whenever it expires, which is probably not a realistic date either. I remember when I was a kid, and this was in elementary school, there was a story about Grace Wiley, and of course it caught my attention because I'm a reptile guy and was from young years on, but I remember reading and seeing the pictures of her holding cobras and holding, venomous snakes and things. Yeah. And she took off her glasses for a picture, and one of her cobras bit her or something. And they went to get her antivenom, but the antivenom I think was good, but the syringe was rusted. So, they couldn't inject her with the antivenom because the syringe was at least that's what my 10-year-old self remembers.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah. I remember that story. Something to that capacity.
So, I think, having that kind of centralized Venom 1, Venom 2 scenario is probably very smart. And, if there's a way to incorporate those kind of things, to where it's kind of a pooled thing where, lots of people may have interest in the state, especially if they're the venomous laws are a little lax in that state. You'd think they'd want to have that on hand,
it goes back to system. It goes back to the same thing of we spend $1,000 on an animal, but we have it in a 1995 cage. From Container Store, and don't get me wrong, I've got plenty of animals in Container Store tubs, right? But it's the same concept of, man, I got this animal that I paid $200 for this cobra, but now I got to pay $5,000, $6,000 in antivenom for it, when the odds of me having an issue, and this is going to sound really dumb, I'm going to get blasted for this, the ignorance, right? The odds of me having an envenomation for me is incredibly low, because in all the years that someone handles venomous, they don't have to ever touch the animal. We choose to touch the animal. I know guys that have been doing venomous for 50, 60 years, and they're like, man, I always wanted to touch that thing. I just never had the gumption to do it. That's fine. And they've never had a close call. We get close calls because we want to interact with the animals. We want to touch them and stuff. And there's a right and a wrong way to do that. I talk to my friend Henry all the time. We talk about the difference between free handling and manual manipulation.
Right.
And it's very, very simple in its design. Your free handling is literally sitting there and playing with the animal as if it was a corn snake. Manual manipulation is using your hands to move and transport said animal from one spot to another safely and methodically, keeping the animal calm, keeping the animal relaxed. And the old adage of, I know my animals. Yeah, you can know your animal until you don't. You could do this for 10 years with the same animal every day for 10 years. And then one day that animal says, you know what? Nope, not today, Phil. So there is a very fine line between those two. But that being said, no one should be able to say how I handle my animals, but someone should always have taught the person correctly. Does that make sense?
And
you have a lot of bad mentors who say, "Oh man, they're toxic. They're not that toxic. Just grab them." Excuse me?
Yeah. Who knows how you're going to react to something?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, you could develop a sensitivity to certain venoms. And, I've heard a lot of my Australian friends talk about that. Peter Birch has a sensitivity to like swampy, the little swamp snake venom, that they're not very dangerous unless you have sensitivity to their venom. And then they're extremely dangerous potentially. The other, so I'm going to set up the pins here and you can bowl them over, I'm sure. But, some of those, what were they, shift cages or whatever, where you lock the animal using, a sliding door or something. And, then you never have to really handle the animal at all. So, in a naive person like me, think like that's the best case scenario, because you never risk a bite, because you never interact with the animal directly. You're always, locking it in a box, pulling the box out, putting it somewhere safe while you maintain the cage, and something like, that seems to a non-venomous keeper, like that would be the best case scenario.
And it works. It works like a charm. It works. It works like a charm. Do I own shift boxes? Yes. Do I own trap boxes? Yes. No one should own that box unless you can actually handle the animal correctly and safely. That's just it. And it's like saying, okay, I'm going to buy we're going back to the Ferrari, right? I want to buy the Ferrari, but I'm going to put a governor in it that only goes 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. And every time you drive that car, the bolts come loose on that governor, and they come loose and they come loose and they come loose. And one day you forget to tighten the knob on that trap box, or one day you think the snake's in the trap box and it's not. It's underneath the water bowl where you thought it couldn't fit. Right. Yeah. And then you reach in with that trap box, and now that snake is out, or that snake is on you, or what have you. And I talk to Scott about this all the time. Like, him and I both have shift boxes. We both have trap box. Cody Bartolini, fantastic. He has some of the nicest shifting cages I've ever seen in my life. And he uses them, but he doesn't have to. He is so in tune. Scott is so in tune with his animals and learning how they work, their body mechanics, their locomotion, their individual personalities, that he can remove said animal from the enclosure safely and continue about his process. He doesn't have to. They don't have to shove it in the box or wait until it goes in the box and then close the door real quick. So yeah, shift boxes are cool. Trap boxes are cool, but you should be able to handle that animal without it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I buy that.
I guess maybe kind of a final point that I'd potentially bring up here is, there should be some responsibility of the person being trained. I mean, I assume, like in your situations, some of these stories where they say, go ahead and just go in there, don't die. You say, you're the wrong person to be training me. I'm out of here. I'm going to find a right person or work through the venomous community, get recommendations from other venomous keepers. I don't know. I have a funny story, speaking of venomous keepers that should know better, but I'm not going to name names here, but one of my friends went to this well-known venomous keeper and said, and he had some cobras for him, and he said, let's, sex these. And the guy that was receiving the cobras wanted to sex them. And my friend said, oh, I can kind of visually sex them. I can get a good idea about if they're males or females just by looking at them, or the tail lengths or whatever.
Sure.
And the guy's like, no, let's do this. Let's do this right. Let's probe them. And, and so my friend said, okay, I'm going to restrain them. You probe them, so he's kind of taking the dangerous end. The guy's like, yeah, let's do that. And so my friend restrains the first one. He gets the probe and he sticks the probe up the cloaca instead of into the hemipene hemiclitoral pocket. And says, oh, that's a male. And my friend said, okay, we're done here. I'm just going to visually sex him. We'll be good. Yeah. So, even the people who may be looked at as experts, sometimes they're not such experts. So I thought it was a pretty funny story. But
I have a similar story. An individual who I don't talk to anymore, and I don't know why. I don't think anything happened. I think we just kind of fell out of touch. But a young kid, 19, 20 years old, lives out of state, and he saw my venomous etiquette videos, the ones I was putting out. I'm due to put out another one on YouTube, and he's like, hey man, is there any way that we could speak on the phone and you could mentor me to the best of your ability over the phone? And I said, sure, I'll give you some pointers, but it's very difficult to not show you. You know what I mean? And he told me that he's in Texas, and he went to somebody's house to try and get mentorship. And he said the guy was really weird, and he just picked stuff up, and he had a hook in his hand, but he wouldn't use it. He would just grab them anyway. And it was this whole thing. And I told him, I was like, look, man, if it feels wrong, it probably is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And
go with your gut on those.
Yeah. Go with your gut. Yeah.
Don't put yourself in that situation.
And I think one of the biggest things that I always tell people is I don't teach venomous handling. I teach safety. I teach Henry always says this, my class is not a snake handling class. It is a snake safety class. Right.
Yeah.
And it's never a break dance. It's always a waltz. It's a ballet. Everything needs to be slow and smooth and methodical and relaxed until it's not. And you got to break dance, in which case you throw down the cardboard and let it happen. Right.
Yeah.
So if you go into a scenario or a situation where it's techno light strobing and like house music, that's not kosher. That's not the right thing. It needs to be the opposite. It needs to be Baroque and, you know, Victorian and relaxed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and if you're
wigs and powder and
the whole nine yards.
100%.
Yeah, but if you're gonna keep Venomous, make sure that you're getting the right training, that you're conscientious about that, not just trying to pass off your hours so you can hurry and get that cobra you wanted your whole life. Be smart for yourself, like get that education that will keep you safe, keep you happy. And now, there's no guarantee that, all the safety training in the world is not going to prevent every bite, and I mean, working in a lab with deadly viruses, we try our best to have, and that should always be on the forefront of anybody that's working with anything dangerous is safety, safety first. And, it's your life on the line, quite literally, if you're dealing with something that's lethal. So, the onus is on the person to make sure that they're trained properly and to walk away from a situation. It might delay your ability to keep that animal that you so want to keep. But, if you're going to live longer and be able to enjoy that animal for a longer time because you got trained properly, it's probably worth it, right?
100%. So, well said, sir. Well said. Chuck, you were going to say something earlier, and I feel like we stopped you.
Oh man, that was so long ago. That left shortly after I. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Well, you got any kind of final parting words?
If anyone's looking to get into Venomous and get a mentor, learn as much as you can. And even if you find the perfect mentor and you're like, man, this individual is worldly and experienced and safe and methodical, that's fantastic. Still get another person. Always get a second, a third, a fifth, a 10th opinion. Always learn as much as you can, because what techniques work for me may not work for you at all, or better yet, they may work a little bit and you still need to get stuff from other people. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of Venomous keepers or soon to be or aspiring Venomous keepers, they get stuck where they're like, man, I only got one guy in 100 miles. I have to just get my time with them. And it's like, no, do some more homework. If that means you got to travel far away, make friends on Facebook, whatever, learn from other people. And learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah, I like that story you shared about the guy in Texas, like looking for additional, supporting training, even if it's over the phone. I mean, you can provide some input, or here's what I'm trying to do, and here's what I've been doing, or here's what I'm working with. Hey, have you thought about this? I've worked with that species for 20 years, and here's the close call I had. Avoid this, that kind of thing. So there's always
even small. Yeah, even small stuff like racks. Personally, the two most deadly things with Venomous keeping is deli cups and racks, because we're so ingrained to use our hands. You're sliding a drawer open with your fingers, and the snake's just sitting there, and it's going to see your heat signature, or it's going to see the motion, or it's going to know that every time that drawer gets opened, it's provided a meal, and that's when accidents happen.
It's focused. It's focused one way, right? It's focused. I mean, it's all right
where
there
it opens.
In front of. It's like
exactly.
So if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, and if it doesn't seem right, it's probably not. And always get second and third and fifth and 20th opinions. So.
And also, I mean, you might be really great at handling a certain class or group, the Australians are almost born handling elapids. They have all sorts of elapid experience. There was a famous
shit scares me to watch. Man, those snakes are fast and just I would never, but they're, people can be, it's impressive. It's really impressive. And
there was a famous Australian researcher that came over here for a conference and did some herping down in Arizona or New Mexico or something like that. And then he got bit by either a copperhead or a rattlesnake or some kind of viparid. And, he had all the elapid experience in the world, but that viparid acted differently than all the elapids that he'd handled, and he got bit. So it might have been an accident, like flipping a log or something, the wrong way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even those kind of things are,
but that's part of it, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's part of it.
And I guess the point of that is you're never too knowledgeable to, make a mistake or too knowledgeable to learn from somebody, especially a local, don't just assume I'm Mr. Venomous in Australia. That translates to Mr. Venomous over here. So there's
well said.
There's a lot of things to consider when you're, putting your life on the line potentially. Yeah. And when I kept those rattlesnakes, I never handled them, or I wouldn't really manipulate them. I'd kind of use a long handled grabber to pull feces out of the cage or whatever. So I wasn't really trying to interact with them or pull them out or handle them or whatever. But I left them in the care of my parents when I lived in Germany for a couple of years, and my mom went in and she heard the rattlesnake rattling. She was looking in the cage trying to see it, and then she looked up and it was sitting on top of the cage. And this is a midget faded rattlesnake that kind of had a bad attitude, and it's a few inches from her face, and that was the main reason I gave him up. Was I heard that story and I'm like, oh man, I feel horrible. If my mom would have got bit on the nose or something, I would have been not a good situation.
I thought maybe she beat you within an inch of your life and
yeah. So even when things can happen, they probably weren't kept in the proper caging or that kind of thing. She called my dad in a panic and he said, oh, I'll take care of it after work, and just put some towels under the door, make sure it can't get out of the room. And when he got back from work, it was just sunning itself in the windowsill, so he just scooped it back into its cage. But yeah, that's, it might not just be you that you're risking in a lot of these situations. And so you need to have concern for those around you and be aware of, what you're doing, if it's proper, to also protect the safety of others. So,
and I mean, maybe 20 years ago, that didn't make it all over the place, but there's an incident with something, social media and the internet now, it's everywhere instantly, and you have capitalists who will pounce on any opportunity to spin something or make something. Mm-hmm. It's not the minutia and the detail of it never comes out. It's, it's always I think, and I don't remember if I know I talked about this, but there was a guy, I don't remember where it was, but he had passed away and he had snakes and some of them were venomous. And you read, we talked about this, Justin, and I think, you read the article and the article just like, it goes out of its way to imply that somehow the venomous snake had something to do with it. But even in the article, like it never says that, you know what I mean? It's like, the
title leads you to believe the snake's killed.
They were like reaching for it at every turn. But
did they ever say what it was?
No, I don't think
a heart attack or something.
I don't think it ever said.
And that's what I'm saying. And I think even you were saying like in the bottom of it, it like explicitly said that, it's unclear of why he passed away, So it was like, come on, man.
Yeah, all the snakes were in their cages. There was nothing out. And you hear it from the people who were close by, and they tell you the real story. Like, no, nothing. It wasn't. Well, but he was
like a great neighbor, and everyone loved him. And then they found out he had snakes, and oh my God, we never knew. How, like it was friggin' Jeffrey
Things
Dahmer.
Get blown out of
like,
the water.
Get out of here, man. Like
exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's kind of how the public sees reptile keepers sometimes. I mean, I think that's changing over time with educating the youth and stuff, but we need to be aware that we're heavily scrutinized. There's not a lot of room for error, so
there's no room.
And if you can't control your desire for instant gratification, I want a snake right now and I don't care, nobody can tell me what I can and can't, that's, you probably don't want to get a venomous snake. Let's think about.
I do think that is probably a point for you, Justin, in the fact that mentorship done right, can that at least at that point, where it feels like, look, man, I don't want to do this to you, but you shouldn't be doing this. I'm not gonna mentor you. I mean, obviously that person could go out and there's plenty of people who will sell venomous snakes to people who are unqualified and not licensed. And, that's an obvious black eye, but at least, somebody has told this person, look, I know what I'm doing, and you shouldn't be doing this, like straight up, like, and
it's a two-way street.
And it's kind of, that's a rough thing too, right? Because here's obviously somebody who wants to do it, but shouldn't be doing it. And if you don't help them, are they going to just go do it on their own and then potentially have a bad outcome, which, only scrutinizes everybody else? Like, man.
How about, I know for a fact that there are several individuals that are very popular on social media, right? And I know for a fact that they learned correctly and that they are very, very good at knowing their animals in terms of natural history and husbandry and handling. And they are very methodical and very professional, but not on social media.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Put out that persona that they're, flying by the seat of their pants. It's all exciting and scary. And they could get you at any moment or something.
I had a guy come to me and said, hey, all right, so let's rewind a little bit. I had a guy who wanted to get hours with me, and he did 6 to 8 months with me, and he was fantastic. He had done stuff at other facilities, and I tried to vet him, but I couldn't because the people that he had worked with had actually moved out of country. And I eventually did, and everything he told me was a lie. But it didn't negate the fact that he was very good. He was very, very good. And when it got down to brass tacks, he was rushed. He had to get his permit now. And when it came down to me signing off on him, I said, look, man, I'll sign off for 500 hours. I'm not signing off on the 1,000 because you didn't do 1,000 hours. And you've only been with me for less than a year.
I don't want to get in trouble for you.
Right. Exactly. It's my butt signing off on it. So he says, whatever, fine, I'll take the hours that you give me. And he goes off and I don't hear anything of it. And then some time goes by, 6 months, whatever. And another student comes and he's like, hey man, I've done some hours with this person, that person. I'd like to get some hours with you. Sure. No problem. Come on by. We'll do it. And I say, oh, so who'd you train with? Oh, I trained with so-and-so. I go, really? So let's do this. How would you remove this animal? And the things that he was taught were deadly. The things that he was taught was going to get him killed. And I had to basically unteach him, you know what I mean? Break all the habits that he had and start from scratch, because the stuff that he was taught by this, anxious Anakin, if you will, was detrimental to everyone, detrimental to our community, detrimental to the animal, detrimental to the individual.
There's something interesting about human nature that kind of turns the brain off when you really want to do something or want something. I had a friend that did skydiving, and he didn't want to have, be strapped to an instructor's back. So he learned, went through the courses and learned how to skydive individually and all the, all that kind of stuff. And so it came time to sky. And there was a guy in the class that he had a lot of money. So he bought all the, the skydiving equipment and was all gung ho about it. And
the gear. And
he had seen, skydivers that, the guys that would, land and run out of it, and he's like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to run out of it. And they're like, no, that's an expert move. You're a beginner. Don't try to run out of it your first go. And he didn't listen, and he tried to run out of his first jump, and he broke both his femurs. It's like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Now, that only impacted him. It didn't say, okay, nobody can skydive anymore. Whereas, that's somewhat of a reality in the venomous community. And so
very much a reality.
That's a hard balance to strike. Right.
And I do got to say though, sometimes it's just not fair though, because I think, if somebody there's all types of risk, right? And you assume so much risk as a human being just operating out in the world. And the way we assign risk sometimes, is working with venomous animals risky? Yes. But as long as you're assuming that risk in the safest way possible, and the only person who gets injured is you.
Right.
That's no different than so many other things other than the way it's looked at by people who would marginalize it because it's reptiles, because it's a venomous snake, right? And I guess that kind of chaps my ass, you know. It's just like, and you know, it's just kind of unfair. And I mean, I guess maybe some of that is understood. You know, you do hear about stuff happening, and it you know, the noise level goes up, and then kind of the noise level goes down, and I think some of that is not lost on people, but it's an easy, you know, it's an easy target, it's an easy feather ruffler. So you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, obviously, anytime we're easy targets, we got to do it better than you know. Than the next group, but you know, it's just
statistically proven that driving a car is more dangerous than keeping venomous snakes. It's statistically proven.
Well, dude, more people die from horses. Like, there's so many other animals that are domestically kept that people die for at much, not slightly, but much higher rates every year, and it's just kind of like, you know, because they're, you know, they're horses, and we ride horses, and we have a long history with horses and in settling this country and things like that. It's like, well, we couldn't get rid of horses. Like, what? Like, we could regulate horses. Like, people would flip the fuck out, you know?
Well, that's the Steve Rennell cute and cuddly theory, right?
Yep. And, exactly. You can have cats all day long in Australia, but if you want to have some, you know, reptile from another country, no go. You know, even though those other reptiles from other countries aren't decimating, you know, the wildlife populations like a cat would.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sorry, I always have to do some kind of a rant.
I love it.
I've been on a rant roll recently, so
we love your rants, Chuck.
Oh
it's
my
all
gosh,
good.
Great. It's great.
That keeps it spicy, right?
Well,
we sure appreciate you coming on, Phil. This has been a really good conversation. I mean, I've learned a ton, and you know, I've always been fascinated by venomous reptiles, and I love rattlesnakes. I love to encounter them in the wild and see them, and you know, seeing the ridge nose and the cloudbri this last year. Oh my gosh.
I missed out, man.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So, you know, it's really cool to think about keeping venomous and things. So where can people find you if they want to, you know, reach out?
I'm all over the place. So we have a live podcast called Snakes and Stogies every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's part of the Herpetoculture Network, which is a network of podcasts a few of my friends and I have. And then I just started a new podcast with the one and only Mr. Nipper Reed called Venom Exchange Radio. And that's also anywhere you can find podcasts. There's only one episode out right now. The next episode 2, comes out on Sunday.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's going to be a strictly venomous centric podcast. So field herping, breeders, photography, husbandry, you know, the medical field. We're going to cover it all.
And that's on the NPR network, right? Like,
well, we kind of collaborated between the two. So
cool.
It's our own Venom Exchange Radio is its own feed, but obviously Nipper comes from the NPR side. I come from the Herpetoculture Network side. So we're we're the liaisons to both.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
Give it a listen. Yeah, I'm excited. I honestly, I spaced it off, so I need to go and listen to that. I'm really excited. I remember hearing the announcement, and so I need to get in there and listen to it. But
I appreciate it, guys.
Good stuff. And I mean, I don't know. I really enjoy listening to you guys on Snakes and Stogies. It's you guys do a quality job. You get a lot of good guests.
Means a lot.
And I mean, you got to mention your Nephris.
So my Instagram is the Nephris Initiative. It's basically my animal account, if you will, but it's knobtail specific. So Nephris and Underwoodosaurus. And I made the page to promote photography and husbandry and breeding of knobtails, because at the time when I made it, there really wasn't anything. There sure as hell wasn't a beautiful book written by the one and only Dr. Drewlander, right? So I tried to share as much as I could about knobtails and barking geckos, and it kind of snowballed into some venomous stuff here and there. But yeah, if you're interested in knobtails, it's the Nephris Initiative. It's actually knobtails.ig. So
yeah, very cool stuff. Yeah. All right, man. Thanks again for coming on, and
thank you guys.
Yeah. We'll give a shout out to the Morelia Python Radio Network. The website, moreliapythonradio.com. Everything you need to know is there. You can follow them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything's at NPR Network. How did I do this week, Chuck?
You did well.
Getting polished here. Hope the Podfather is happy.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Well done, Justin. Well done.
Well, thanks for listening to another edition of Reptile Fight Club, and we'll be back at you next week.
Stay hungry like the wolf, folks, and we're out.
Fight Club.